My daughter's screams echoed through my phone as I watched the security camera footage. They dragged her into a van, my 17-year-old Lila, while that woman, Evelyn Hargrove, stood watching with a smile on her face. The same woman who had been making our lives hell for years just because we are black. The same woman who had no idea I was the sheriff of this county. And now she had crossed a line she could never uncross. I loaded my gun, called my deputies, and made a promise to myself. By sunrise, my daughter would be home and Evelyn Hargrove would be behind bars. Before we start the story, please comment and let us know from which country you are watching. Also subscribe the channel. 10 years ago, when we moved to Oak Ridge suburbs, I thought we'd found our forever home. The neighborhood seemed perfect. Large houses with manicured lawns, quiet streets where children played, and a community pool that sparkled in the summer sun. My wife Maria fell in love with the brick colonial on Maple Avenue, with its spacious kitchen and backyard big enough for barbecues. Our daughter Lila, 7 at the time, was excited about her new room with a window seat. I was proud to give them this life on my sheriff's salary. What the real estate agent never mentioned was that we would be the only black family in Oak Ridge. I didn't think it would matter. I was the newly appointed sheriff of Pine County, respected in my field with 15 years of law enforcement experience. Maria was a pediatric nurse at the local hospital. We were hardworking professionals who kept to ourselves and followed the rules. The first month went smoothly. Neighbors brought welcome baskets and we received invitations to backyard cookouts. I remember telling Maria, "See? Times have changed." She smiled but didn't look convinced. The trouble began at the first Oak Ridge Homeowners Association meeting. I sat in the back of the community center, listening as members discussed playground renovations and plans for the summer block party. Then a woman with platinum blonde hair styled in a perfect bob stood up. She wore an expensive-looking blazer and spoke with the confidence of someone used to being in charge. "I'm Evelyn Hargrove, your OHA president," she announced. "I'd like to discuss some concerns about maintaining our neighborhood standards." Her eyes found me in the crowd, and something in her gaze made me sit up straighter. "We've noticed some properties aren't being maintained to Oak Ridge standards," she continued. "Lawns must be cut weekly. Holiday decorations must be approved. House colors must adhere to our palette. These rules exist for a reason, to protect property values and preserve the character of our community." The way she emphasized character made her meaning clear. The meeting moved on, but Evelyn's eyes kept finding mine, her smile never reaching them. The next day we received our first violation notice. Our grass was apparently half an inch too tall. I mowed it immediately, but another notice arrived 3 days later about our mailbox being non-regulation. We fixed that too. Then came complaints about our porch furniture, Maria's garden, and even the color of our curtains. At first, I handled it professionally. I respected rules, even petty ones. I filled out the proper forms, attended the meetings, and made the required changes. Maria urged me to fight back, but I believed in working within the system. "I'm the sheriff," I told her. "I need to set an example." But the violations kept coming, always just for our house. When white neighbors left toys on their lawns or parked extra cars in their driveways, Evelyn looked the other way. When we did the same, fines appeared in our mailbox. 6 months after we moved in, Maria came home in tears. She'd been at a community center meeting for the summer festival when Evelyn suggested she would be more comfortable volunteering in the kitchen rather than on the planning committee. She said it would be a better fit for someone like me, Maria whispered. Everyone just nodded along. That night I saw something change in my wife. Her smile became less frequent, and she stopped attending neighborhood events. She told Lila not to walk alone through the community, to always come straight home after school. Lila was having her own problems. None of the neighborhood children invited her to their birthday parties. At the community pool, mothers pulled their children closer when she approached. At school, classmates asked if she lived in the servants' quarters of Oak Ridge. I installed security cameras around our house after finding eggs splattered on our garage door one morning. The footage showed teenagers, including Evelyn's son, running away laughing. When I confronted her, she smiled coldly and said, "Boys will be boys. Perhaps your home stands out too much." For years we endured this treatment. I documented everything, building a file of harassment and discrimination. As sheriff, I understood the law and I knew what they were doing was wrong. But I also knew how these cases typically went: denied, dismissed, dragged out until the victims gave up or moved away. We considered moving, but why should we? We'd done nothing wrong. This was our home. I didn't want to teach Lila that the solution to injustice was retreat. So we stayed, and I watched my family's happiness slowly erode under the constant pressure. My office at the sheriff's department was my sanctuary, the one place where my authority wasn't questioned because of my skin color. My deputies respected me. My solve rate for major crimes was the highest in the state. Here I was Sheriff James Robinson, not that black man in Oak Ridge. That Tuesday morning I was reviewing case files when Deputy Garcia knocked on my door. "Sheriff, there's something you should see," he said, placing a file on my desk. "Drug Task Force picked up a member of the Red Vipers last night. During questioning, he mentioned a deal with someone from Oak Ridge suburbs." I flipped through the report. The Red Vipers were a relatively new gang in our county, dealing mainly in narcotics and human trafficking. They'd been gaining territory, but we hadn't connected them to Oak Ridge before. "The suspect said a woman was paying them to remove a problem family from the neighborhood," Garcia continued. "Wouldn't give a name, but mentioned she runs some kind of association." My blood ran cold. "Did he mention which family?" Garcia hesitated. "No specifics, but he said it was the only black family in the area." I thanked him and closed my office door. My hands shook as I called Maria. "Everything okay at home?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Yes, just finishing my shift." Lila texted that she's heading to the library after school to work on a project. "Why?" "No reason. Just checking in." "I love you." "James? What's wrong?" "Nothing," I lied. "I'll be home for dinner." I hung up and stared at the report. It could be coincidence or an empty threat, but my instincts told me otherwise. I pulled up the file I'd been keeping on the OHA harassment and added this new information. That evening, I drove home with my mind racing. I needed more evidence before I could act officially. Evelyn was well connected. Her husband was a judge, her brother the mayor of the neighboring town. If I moved too soon with too little, they would discredit me, maybe even cost me my badge. Our house was quiet when I arrived. Maria was preparing dinner, the familiar smell of her jerk chicken filling the kitchen. I kissed her cheek and asked, "Lila home yet?" Maria frowned. "I thought she'd be home by now. She's not answering my texts." "She's probably still at the library," I said, but my stomach tightened. I texted Lila, "Dinner soon. Heading your way." No response. I called the library. They confirmed Lila had been there but left over an hour ago. I checked the location app on our family phones. Lila's showed she was at the Oak Ridge Community Center, then the signal disappeared. "I'm going to look for her," I told Maria, grabbing my keys. The community center was dark when I arrived. No cars in the parking lot, no lights inside. I used my master key to enter, calling Lila's name. Nothing. In the main meeting room, I found her backpack on the floor, contents scattered. Her phone lay under a chair, screen cracked. Fear gripped me as I called it in. "This is Sheriff Robinson. I need units at the Oak Ridge Community Center. My daughter is missing, possible abduction." As I waited for backup, I checked the center's security cameras. The footage showed Lila entering at 5:30 p.m., then Evelyn Hargrove arriving minutes later. They appeared to argue. Then 3 men entered, tattoos visible on their arms, Red Vipers insignia clear even on the grainy footage. They grabbed Lila, who fought back fiercely. Evelyn stood watching, arms crossed, as they dragged my daughter outside to a waiting van. In that moment, the badge on my chest felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I was the county sheriff, sworn to protect and serve. But I was also a father watching his child being taken by criminals, with the cooperation of a woman who had tormented my family for years. My deputies arrived, faces grim as I showed them the footage. "Sheriff, is that Evelyn Hargrove?" Deputy Martinez asked in disbelief. "Yes," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "And we're going to bring her in. But first, we find my daughter." The rain started as night fell, heavy drops pounding the pavement as we set up command at the sheriff's station. My team worked with precision, fueled by determination and loyalty. They all knew Lila. She'd baked cookies for the department Christmas party, volunteered at our community outreach events. To them, this wasn't just the sheriff's daughter. This was family. "Red Vipers have 3 known locations in the county," Deputy Chin said, pointing to a map. "An abandoned factory on River Road, an apartment complex in the east side, and a warehouse near the train tracks." "The suspect we arrested mentioned a factory," Deputy Garcia added. "Said something about new merchandise being processed there this week." The word merchandise made my jaw clench. I outlined our plan. 3 teams would hit all locations simultaneously. No chances, no warnings. Meanwhile, a 4th team would bring in Evelyn Hargrove. "Sir," Martinez said carefully, "Mrs. Hargrove's husband." "I don't care if her husband is the governor," I cut in. We have her on video participating in a kidnapping. Nobody's above the law in my county. I geared up alongside my deputies, checking my weapon with practiced hands that somehow remained steady. Throughout my career, I kept my emotions separate from my work. Tonight, that separation was impossible. But I couldn't let rage cloud my judgment. Lila needed me thinking clearly. As we prepared to move out, I took a moment alone in my office. On my desk sat a photo of Lila's graduation from middle school, her smile wide and innocent. I touched the frame gently. "I'm coming, baby girl," I whispered. The radio crackled. "Team in position at the Hargrove residence." I grabbed my tactical vest. "Bring her in. And read her rights twice." Our convoy moved through the rain-slicked streets, sirens off, lights dark. Intel suggested the factory on River Road was our best bet. I rode shotgun in the lead vehicle, scanning the darkness as we approached. The old paper factory loomed against the night sky, windows broken, walls covered in graffiti. A single van, matching the one from the security footage, sat outside. Two men stood guard at the entrance, red Viper's tattoos visible even from a distance. I gave the signal and we moved in silent formation, surrounding the building. Through my earpiece, I heard the second team confirm they were in position at the warehouse, while the third reported the apartment complex was clear. "Sheriff," came Martinez's voice, "we have Mrs. Hargrove in custody. She's demanding her lawyer and claiming harassment. Tell her she can explain to the judge why she's on camera helping kidnap a minor," I replied. "Any sign of her husband?" "Not home. She says he's at a conference in Chicago." One less complication. Keep her isolated. No calls. I focused back on the factory. The rain provided cover as we crept closer. Through a broken window, I glimpsed movement inside, at least 5 men, all armed. And there, tied to a chair in the center of the room, was Lila. Her face was bruised, but her eyes were alert, scanning her surroundings. Even in danger, my girl was looking for a way out. Pride mixed with fury as I signaled the team. We would breach from 3 entry points simultaneously. I would lead the front team myself. "On my mark," I whispered into my radio. 3, 2, 1, go. We burst through the doors, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Sheriff's Department. Hands where I can see them. Chaos erupted. The gang members reached for weapons. Shots were fired, not by us. My deputies moved with disciplined precision, neutralizing threats without lethal force where possible. I made straight for Lila, staying low. One man grabbed her, pressing a gun to her head. "Back off or she dies," he shouted. I stopped, raised my hands. "Think carefully," I said, my voice deadly calm. "You're holding the daughter of the county sheriff. Look at me. Look at my face." Confusion flickered in his eyes as recognition dawned. Evelyn hadn't told them who Lila's father was. "If anything happens to her," I continued, "there won't be a hole deep enough for you to hide in. But right now you can still walk out of here alive." His hand trembled. Lila's eyes met mine, and in that split second of distraction, she slammed her head backward into his face. He staggered, and I lunged forward, tackling him to the ground as my deputies secured the others. I cut Lila free from the chair, checking her injuries. "Are you hurt? Did they?" "I'm okay, Dad," she whispered, voice shaking but strong. "They were waiting to talk to their boss before anything else happened." I held her tightly, feeling her tears soak into my shoulder. "I've got you now. You're safe." As we walked out of the factory, Lila leaning against me, the rain had stopped. Deputy Chin approached with an update. "All suspects in custody. 5 total, including their lieutenant. The boss wasn't here." "He will be," I said grimly. "Get them talking. I want names, locations, everything they know about Evelyn Hargrove's involvement." In the car, Lila told me what happened. Evelyn had asked her to come to the community center, claiming there was a summer internship opportunity she wanted to discuss. "I knew something was off," Lila said. "But I thought maybe she was finally accepting us. When I got there, she started saying horrible things, that we were bringing down property values, that we didn't belong. She said if we wouldn't leave voluntarily, she'd found people who could remove the problem. Then those men came in." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Did she say anything else? Anything about why now, after all these years?" Lila hesitated. "She mentioned something about a development deal. Said Oak Ridge was about to become prime real estate, and they couldn't have elements like us driving away investors." Another piece of the puzzle. This wasn't just about race, it was about money too. Evelyn didn't want black faces in her promotional materials for whatever lucrative deal was brewing. The interrogation room felt too small for the rage I was containing. Evelyn Hargrove sat across from me, still wearing her designer clothes from the night before, though her perfect hair had lost its shape. Her lawyer, a nervous young man from her husband's firm, sat beside her. "Mrs. Hargrove," I began, my voice professional despite everything, "you've been charged with kidnapping, conspiracy to commit human trafficking and hate crimes. We have you on video assisting in the abduction of my daughter. We have testimony from the Red Vipers lieutenant placing you as the person who hired them to remove my family from Oak Ridge. We have financial records showing payments from your personal account to known gang members." I laid photos on the table, security camera stills, bank statements, text messages recovered from her phone. "This is absurd," she said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "I'm being framed. This is harassment because I enforced community standards that your family repeatedly violated." "Community standards?" I repeated. "Like the standard that black families aren't welcome in Oak Ridge?" Her lawyer jumped in. "My client denies any racial motivation in her actions as OHA president." I ignored him, keeping my eyes on Evelyn. "We executed a search warrant on your home this morning. We found detailed plans for removing my family, along with similar plans for 2 Hispanic families looking to move into Oak Ridge. We found emails discussing the upcoming luxury development deal with Platinum Estates and your concern that diverse faces would hurt marketing." Evelyn's mask finally slipped. "You people always play the race card. Oak Ridge has standards. We worked hard to build a certain type of community. Your family was dragging it down. The clothes you wear, the music you play, the way you talk, it's not what we want representing our neighborhood." Her lawyer paled. "Mrs. Hargrove, please." "They should have taken the hints and left years ago," she continued, voice rising. "Instead, I had to watch property values stagnate while investors worried about the changing demographic. Do you know what I stood to make from the Platinum Estates deal? Millions. All ruined because you people wouldn't leave." I let the recorder capture every word of her tirade before speaking again. "You arranged for my 17-year-old daughter to be kidnapped and sold, Mrs. Hargrove, because of our skin color and your profit margin." She fell silent, finally realizing what she'd admitted. "Your husband returned from Chicago this morning," I added. "He's been informed of the charges. He's not intervening. In fact, he provided some interesting information about your private accounts and your independent activities." Fear flickered in her eyes. The judge was cutting her loose to save himself. "I've spent 10 years watching you terrorize my family," I said quietly. 10 years documenting every violation notice, every insult, every act of discrimination. I could have fought back at any time, but I believed in the system. I believed justice would eventually prevail. Last night, when you came after my child, justice became personal. I stood, gathering my files. "You'll be held without bail pending trial. The FBI has joined the investigation due to the hate crime and human trafficking elements. They'll be interviewing all OHA board members about their knowledge of your plans. Meanwhile, every case I've handled involving your friends and family over the last decade is being reviewed for potential bias or interference." As I reached the door, she called out, "You can't do this. Do you know who I am in this town?" I turned back. "I know exactly who you are, Mrs. Hargrove. The question is, did you know who I am? Not just a black man you could bully. Not just another family you could drive away. I'm the sheriff of this county, and more importantly, I'm a father who would do anything to protect his daughter. You chose the wrong family to target." 10 days after Lila's rescue, our lawn was covered with flowers, cards, and handmade signs from neighbors expressing support and apologies. News of Evelyn's arrest had spread quickly, along with details of the years of harassment we'd endured. Many claimed they hadn't known the extent of it. Some admitted they'd looked the other way out of fear of becoming targets themselves. The remaining OHA board members resigned under pressure. 3 were arrested as accomplices after evidence showed they had known about the kidnapping plan. The Red Vipers operations in Pine County were dismantled, their leadership arrested, their victims rescued. Lila's physical injuries healed faster than her emotional ones. She jumped at unexpected noises and refused to go anywhere alone. But she was also stronger, in some ways more determined. She started a student group at her high school to fight discrimination and organized a community meeting to discuss racism in Oak Ridge. That Friday evening, I sat on our front porch, watching as residents gathered on our lawn. They had asked for this meeting, a chance to apologize and to listen. Maria sat beside me, her hand in mine. Lila stood at the makeshift podium we'd set up, her voice clear as she addressed over 100 neighbors. What happened to our family wasn't just about one hateful woman, she said. It was about a community that allowed hate to thrive. Some of you looked away. Some of you participated in small acts of exclusion that built up over time. Today isn't about blame, it's about acknowledging the truth so we can move forward. I watched with pride as my daughter spoke about her experiences growing up as the only black child in Oak Ridge, about the isolation and fear, but also about her hope for change. When she finished, neighbors lined up to speak, some offering tearful apologies, others sharing their own experiences of feeling pressured to conform to Evelyn's vision of the right kind of community. An elderly man who lived across the street approached me after the gathering. "Sheriff Robinson," he said, extending his hand. "I've lived here 40 years. I watched what happened to your family and said nothing. My silence made me complicit. I want you to know I'm ashamed and I'm committed to doing better." His honesty was refreshing after years of polite smiles hiding prejudice. "Thank you," I replied. "Your words mean a lot." As the crowd dispersed, a reporter who had been covering the case approached. "Sheriff Robinson, people are calling you a hero for bringing down both a hate group and a drug gang in one night. How does it feel?" I shook my head. "I'm not a hero. I'm a father who did what any parent would do to protect their child. And I'm a sheriff who finally brought justice to a situation I should have addressed years ago. Will your family stay in Oak Ridge after everything that's happened?" I looked at our house, the home we had chosen, paid for, and defended. "Yes, this is our home. We won't be driven out by hate, not now, not ever." Later that night, as Maria and Lila slept, I sat in my study reviewing the case files. Evelyn Hargrove and her accomplices would face trial in federal court. The Red Viper's leadership was cooperating, revealing details of other operations in exchange for reduced sentences. The Platinum Estates development deal had collapsed amid the scandal. Justice was being served. But I couldn't help wondering how many other families faced similar discrimination without the protection my badge had ultimately provided. How many others had been forced out of homes and neighborhoods because they didn't fit in? How many children had grown up feeling unwelcome and unsafe? My phone rang, Deputy Martinez calling with an update. "Sheriff, we've identified 3 more families who were driven out of Oak Ridge by the OHA over the past 5 years. All minorities. All targeted with excessive violations and harassment until they left. Get their statements," I said. "And check other upscale neighborhoods in the county for similar patterns." "Already on it, sir. The FBI is broadening their investigation to include neighboring counties. They think this might be more widespread than we initially thought." After hanging up, I made a decision. This case wouldn't end with Evelyn's conviction. I would use my position as sheriff to create a civil rights task force, focused on housing discrimination and hate crimes throughout the county. The badge that had protected my family would now protect others. 1 month after the arrest, Oak Ridge held its first ever Community Unity Day in the park. The newly formed Neighborhood Council, replacing the disbanded OHA, had organized it, with Lila on the planning committee. Food trucks lined the perimeter, representing cuisines from around the world. Children played together on the playground equipment, regardless of skin color. Tables displayed information about different cultures, religions, and the history of housing discrimination in America. Maria and I walked through the crowd, greeted warmly by neighbors who had previously avoided eye contact. The change wasn't universal. Some families had stopped speaking to us entirely, apparently sympathetic to Evelyn's views. But they were now the minority, isolated by their own prejudice rather than isolating others. At the center of the park, a small ceremony was taking place. The county commissioner was unveiling a new sign, "Oak Ridge Suburbs, a community united in diversity." It felt symbolic rather than substantive, but symbols matter. The commissioner called me up to speak. I hadn't prepared anything, but as I looked out at the faces, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, all residents of Pine County, the words came naturally. 10 years ago, my family moved to Oak Ridge seeking the American dream, a nice house in a safe neighborhood with good schools. What we found instead was a painful reminder that dreams aren't equally accessible to everyone. 4 years, we endured discrimination disguised as community standards. We were made to feel like intruders rather than neighbors. The crowd grew silent, some shifting uncomfortably at the directness of my words. What happened to my daughter was the violent culmination of years of unchecked hate. But something good has emerged from that darkness. Today, I see Oak Ridge beginning to become what it always claimed to be, a community of excellence. True excellence isn't about property values or perfect lawns. It's about the character of the people who live here, the values they uphold, and their willingness to stand against injustice. I pointed to the news sign. This means nothing if it's just words. It must be backed by actions, by invitations to dinner, by standing up when you witness discrimination, by examining your own biases, by making space for different perspectives. My family isn't asking for special treatment. We're asking for equal treatment, the same courtesy and respect given to everyone else. As I stepped down, the applause was genuine. Maria squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with pride. Lila was across the park, laughing with a diverse group of teenagers as they painted a unity mural on a previously blank wall. Deputy Chin approached, looking apologetic about interrupting the celebration. "Sir, I thought you'd want to know. Evelyn Hargrove's trial date has been set for July. The prosecutor believes it's an airtight case." "Thank you," I said. "Keep me updated." Later, as the sun began to set, our family walked home together. The neighborhood looked the same: manicured lawns, large houses, clean streets. But something fundamental had changed. We walked taller, unafraid. Neighbors waved from their porches. Children called hello to Lila. At our front door, I paused, looking back at Oak Ridge suburbs. For 10 years we had been outsiders in our own home. Now finally we belonged. "Dad," Lila said, noticing my hesitation. "Everything okay?" I smiled at my brave, resilient daughter. "Yes, everything's finally okay." That night, I removed my sheriff's badge and placed it on my nightstand. It had always represented my duty to protect the community. Now it held new meaning, a reminder that justice requires vigilance, courage, and sometimes personal sacrifice. I had nearly lost my daughter because I had tried to work within a broken system for too long. Never again would I stay silent in the face of injustice, badge or no badge. That was my promise to Lila, to Maria, to myself, and to every family who had ever felt unwelcome in a place they called home. The fight wasn't over, but at least now we were fighting in the open, with the community increasingly on the side of justice. As sheriff, I had sworn to protect and serve. As a father, I had promised to keep my family safe. Both oaths had been tested, and though the cost had been high, I had ultimately fulfilled them. Now it was time for a new promise: to ensure that what happened to us would never happen to another family in Pine County again. Not on my watch.